Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for It Looks Like You're Having a Whiteboarding Interview. How can I help? Before we start, I just have a few quick things to go over. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We ask that you be kind and respectful to everyone, including our speakers. We want the reactors to be a place everyone feels welcome. Please ask questions using the live YouTube or Twitch chat. In the chat, we'll be sharing some links to the Reactor Meetup page and monthly newsletter. If you haven't already, please check in using our event check-in at aka.ms/reactor check-in with event ID 14634. Today's session will be added to the Reactor YouTube page in 24 to 48 hours. And finally, towards the end, I will be sharing a link to the Reactor survey. If you have a few minutes, we greatly appreciate your feedback. And I will now pass it over to Chloe and Gwyn.
It's time. Hello, Gwen.
It's been a minute. A while.
It's been a minute. We had a little holiday break. Oh my gosh, catch me up on what did I miss? Justin was filling in. Did he wear an orange wig? How was it? Tell me everything.
I should have had him do that. But we talked about I mean, we called it like an on-site interview, but in reality, we know it's 2021. There's a Panasonic going on, and it was more of like virtual interview kind of thing, and gave us a lot of insight in terms of like what it's like being someone who interviews people. He's a hiring manager. He's done it for years now. He actually interviewed me for my current position. We actually talked about that a little bit. He talked about things that I did well. He gave like advice to people and stuff like that. Answering a few questions in the chat here and there. Overall, it was a great convo, and it was nice to hear from that perspective of a hiring manager. That recording is available on my YouTube, on the Reactor YouTube. I think it was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's on mine as well, because I got a notification that I was live, and I was like, oh no, I'm streaming from my pocket. And I was like, oh, it's just Gwen.
Can you imagine?
Oh my gosh. Just like
Yeah.
people hearing me talk about The Real Housewives to my boyfriend and him being like, I know, just from my pocket. Speaking of the global Panasonic, my dad accidentally called Microsoft microwave this week, and I'm still laughing about it. He's like, how are things
Microwave.
at microwave? I was like, what? Oh, Microsoft. Yes, dad. Oh man, I love your shirt, Gwen. Empathy always.
Wait,
Love that.
can people see that? It's sort of.
I think I have the hat of that maybe.
Shout
Because
out
I'm
to
all
my
about
girlfriend.
empathy.
It's a gift from her.
Shout out to the girlfriend, shout out to empathy, truly.
Shout out to
And
empathy.
actually, empathy is the theme of the day, I think. I think the theme of the stream, the theme of we don't
The
have time for
series.
this. We got to what would it be? We don't have time for this. We have to express empathy.
We have to be
Um
to practice empathy.
how have you been, Gwen? How have the last couple of weeks been? It's been a hot minute.
Yeah. Good. You know, we had the little holiday break. I ate a lot of food. If y'all follow me on Instagram, you could have seen I was like sharing literally all the food that I had consumed, and I felt like I didn't want to eat for like 3 days after that. And just good time around loved ones. You know, it was nice to get away and literally not have to do anything for a few days. And
Nice.
yeah, just overall nice little break, and you know, diving into December, a few more streams, and then hopefully another break. But then January comes, is like right around the corner, and it's like go kind of thing, right?
This is the season. I had an interesting Thanksgiving because I was on vacation for 2 weeks and I had so much delicious food. My boyfriend and I drove down the coast to Los Angeles and we had so much good food that by the time we got back, and it was Thanksgiving, we're really full. We don't want to eat anything, but I had so much amazing food on this trip. But on the final day, we stopped in Paso Robles and I got a duck chalupa. And I have not stopped thinking about it since I had it. I had never had a chalupa before. I know, shocker, but it changed my life, and I keep having dreams about it. But it was a little non-traditional Thanksgiving. I'm like, what did I do on Thanksgiving? I guess I just kind of hung out and had a full belly. So
I mean, what else can you ask for? Literally, what
yeah,
else could you ask for?
truly. I have something to share relevant to the show. So for
Please
people who
do.
haven't joined before, this is how can I help? And this is our last episode. It's our very last episode of the series. So this episode is going to be kind of a summary of everything that we've covered. We'll
A
do like
celebration, if you might, right?
celebration of life, celebration of stream. We'll review some of the stuff we've gone over. We'll probably go over a little bit of whiteboarding as well, because that's the original theme of the show is going to be. Hi, Steve. Steve's in the chat saying hi. But I actually started interviewing people this week at Microsoft, which
A microwave.
at Microwave, if you can believe it. Been here 3 years. I of course had interviewed people in other at other companies and jobs, but I started interviewing here, and it's been so interesting because to be on the other side of the table, so to speak. So I don't know, maybe some things will come up today while we're chatting about it. But I do want to share this, which is that, you know, it's been a hot moment since I of course have interviewed many times in my life, like as an interviewee. That's the person who's being interviewed, right? But being the interviewer reminds me a lot. I think I've talked about this on the show before about how in my brain I have this switch, right? Like when I was on the other side of the table for auditions when I was an actor and I went, "Oh, wait a minute. Like I just want everybody to be really good. Like nobody should be no one should be nervous," which is so easy to say. But it's been so interesting being on the other side of things because I'm like, "Oh, right. Like I just get to sit here and have like really great people talk to me. Like all I want to do is just like hear about all the interesting, cool things that these people do." And I hope that like me saying that out loud kind of helps anybody out there who's starting to interview or scared to interview or thinking of interviewing, because if you have a good interviewer, which I hope you do, I hope you're like interviewing at a great, fantastic company who really wants to talk to you. You are in more control as the interviewee than you think you are, because really it's just your job to show how much of a shining superstar you are to this American Idol like panel. But I was thinking like, Gwen, do you get nervous with interviews? Like, I'm trying to think. I don't get nervous per se, but I always afterwards, after I do an interview, I think like, oh, I talked too much or I said this and I should have said that. Like, what's your general vibe when you interview?
It's interesting that you bring up that because we talked about this with Justin as well on the previous stream that we did, and he mentioned like people who interview like the way that he interviews, and he encourages other hiring managers is to sort of take this approach of like, interview the whole person and like treat it as a conversation, like get to know each other instead of like just like skill set kind of thing, right? In terms of like how do I get I think it is like I'm nervous right until it happens, and then I'm like, it's go time, something switches, and then I'm good, and then after it like shuts off and I'm like, oh my goodness, I did terrible or whatever it is.
What did I do?
Yeah. And I do the same. It's like I look back and I'm like, I should have said this, oh, I should have done that. Or sometimes I get asked questions or like, technical, whatever it might be, and maybe I like once I leave, I look back, I could have answered this better, or I could have been more concise here, or something like that. So definitely very like critical to an extent, but I think during the interview I'm not actually very like. I think that's also because I've practiced a lot, like the skill set, and I'm pretty good at communicating and things like that. And I think it's been like that like later years, not necessarily from the beginning. But yeah, I chalk it up to just like lots of practice, that it's been a little easier than I think what it is for most people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that like it's so hard to prepare. Well, oftentimes when you're interviewing, they'll give you like, here's a list of all the things that you need to review, right? But how do you know the unknown? Like I feel like the unknown is always like the scary part, right? But I do have some resources to share. Ooh, we got a good comment here. Okay. So underscore pair says, oops, I got this thing. Okay. I worked with a career coach and she worked with a writer to write a cover letter for me. Ooh, it definitely got me my first dev job. Hiring manager told me the letter was what made her call me. My resume was very weak at the time. This is really interesting because before I was an engineer, I often got told that my cover letter was why they brought me in. I remember specifically when I applied to Yelp as a account, what was it, like an account manager or something like that, that they were like, oh my God, we could tell like you had such this enthusiasm for Yelp in your cover letter. So I want to like, I know that on our cover letter episode, we're just like, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. But I'm going to take that back. If you do have like a slap in cover letter, I do feel like it can do well. Daniel PM in the chat, if you're the same Daniel PM that I've blocked on Instagram and Twitter and everything else, let me know so I can make sure to block you here. Truly, like I don't know why you're still following me on here. That's really annoying. In the meantime, Gwen, while we wait for that answer from Daniel, I'm going to show you a couple of my favorite tools that I use to prepare for whiteboarding, because that is what our episode is about today.
Let's do it.
Let's see. Here we go. So you ever heard of LeetCode, Gwen? Have you ever used LeetCode before?
I do remember having some. I feel like LeetCode is definitely one of those things where it's like you use it intensely for like a month or maybe a couple of weeks, and then you just never touch it, right?
Right.
A love-hate relationship with it.
It's a very I feel like we shudder when we hear the word LeetCode. Let's see. Like I'm going to log into my 1Password here. So LeetCode is definitely one of my go-tos when preparing for this kind of stuff. Let me log in. Oh my gosh, it's probably like, who are you, ma'am? Like, when's the last time you logged in here? I'm also going to share a website that I use frequently called interviewing.io. And this is actually a website.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Ooh, I'm excited to share it. Okay, let's see if I can actually get logged into it. That would be useful. I don't want to share my password with everyone. Okay. But interviewing.io is really interesting. I got introduced to it when I was going to my boot camp, and it's a really cool service. Okay, well, I'll just open it up and put it over here. Okay. So it is a service that connects people. Oh, Daniel PM says nope, but that's really strange because your username matches all of the ones on the other social media platforms. I'll look into that. Thank you, Daniel, for following up. So here is this. I love the copy on here. It says, "Interviewing sucks. We're here to help. Reserve your first slot." So basically, what this is it's a place for people who are looking to get practice as an interviewer, practice their skills to interview people, and then people who want to practice being an interviewee can practice as well. So you can go in here. You can book like a slot with someone. It looks like they've got like Friday and Saturday here. But what's really cool about it is you can actually, I'm not sharing any private info on here, right? No. Okay, good. I'm like, oh no, I'm doxing myself. But what's really cool is you don't have to reveal your identity. Like you can actually change your voice. So like if you are a woman in tech and maybe you want to be judged unbiased, you can have a voice modifier on there, almost like in those documentaries where they have like the black, hoodie and it's like, you don't have to share your name or where you work. It's all done kind of in an anonymous way, which I really appreciated when I was first starting out learning how to whiteboard because I didn't really know what I was doing and I felt a little, I don't know, oddly embarrassed about it, which I don't think there's any shame in it, but I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. But you can basically just go in here. You can look at your, let's see, I've probably done some in the past year. You can look at your interview history. You get feedback from your interviewers. So
Wow.
like
How
they'll
did I
tell you
not know
like
about this?
it's you know what it's relatively new. I want to say it was in
Mm-hmm.
beta when I was going to my boot camp.
Okay.
But here's the really cool part of it, and you'll have to forgive me because it's been a hot minute since I've interviewed or used this tool before. But I believe it if you interview and it goes really well and they're like, hey, this is great, you can get moved on to the next level if you decide to like if they're like, hey, we'd love to interview you for Airbnb or whatever the company is that the person works at, and you can
Mm-hmm.
actually like get jobs through this platform as well. So highly recommend interviewing.io.
Interesting.
Let's see if I can kind of show a little bit of like, okay, let's look at my history. I wonder, this was back in, oh my gosh, 2017. This is embarrassing. Let's look. I was not very good. I was very good at communication. I had okay problem solving. My technical skills were bad. That makes sense. I was fresh out of my boot camp. Let's see. Good at walking through the solution, iteratively building up on the solution. Good job noticing the similarity in the two methods. Because really what they're doing is they're using, leak code problems.
Yeah.
And then going in here and then kind of like providing you feedback on this. So yeah, highly recommend this tool. I'm shocked that more people don't use this tool. And I will say, having interviewed as an engineer many times, this is the closest version of a mock. Like this is the best mock interview experience I've had because I've, gone to whiteboarding sessions and meetups and I've practiced with friends. And there's this certain like let's say you and me practice whiteboarding, Gwen. Like we're buddies. We're gonna just be like joking through the whole thing and we're gonna have that
Yeah.
camaraderie and comfortability. And even when I was going to my boot camp, shout out to Andy Tuba. If Andy Tuba's in the chat. Um, I we did a Reddit whiteboarding session, which was part of my boot camp, and even doing it with like where the stakes are not high, you don't get that kind of like heartbeat. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like there's sort of your heart kind of rushes, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a stranger, and I've explained this coding concept to them. So I highly, highly recommend interviewing.io to like get that full experience, especially if you've never whiteboarded before. If we have any self-taught folks in here, if we have actually someone recently on a stream said that they're community taught. PJ Metz on a podcast said
Mhm.
community taught instead of self-taught, and I'm trying to
Love
say
it.
that more. But everyone check this out. Oh, what is this? Let's click around. Showcase.
I think this
I
is a
don't know.
good question to bring up here. How do you do whiteboard
Yeah.
if you don't have touch capable computer? I found that using keyboard mouse really too hard to whiteboard even on.
Ooh,
Um,
Alex, I
I
guess my question for you would be, is it wait, what do we mean touch capable computer?
I think like a screen, like a touch screen thing.
Mm,
But I think what we mean by whiteboarding isn't necessarily you like using a whiteboard or like you because there's like a bunch of tools, like
yeah.
so many out there that are used for this. It's more of like the technical aspect, which you could be asked to like draw out a solution, diagram a solution. You could be asked to solve, uh, implement some sort of algorithm with like, I've used like CoderPad. What are but like a couple of other ones out there?
You know what? When I interviewed at Google, they make you use a Google Doc,
Google Doc. Yeah, because it could
which
be
is
like
crazy because you can't run the code or anything.
yeah,
I would say to answer this question, Alex, it really varies from company to company.
yeah,
Like
exactly. There's no
I've used
standard.
so many like proprietary, there was one time I think I did a take home thing for Pinterest once, and it wasn't like live, but it was a software that literally tracked every click and tab that I opened so they could see how I like researched what I was trying to look up and stuff. So I think best practice here is when you're meeting with your recruiter or your hiring manager before your like big on-site interview, ask what tools they're going to use,
Yeah.
because then you can like mentally prepare or borrow a device if you need to. Because I remember when I was like hardcore interviewing and had like 3 interviews a week. It was a different tool for each thing, and none of it was consistent, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's no real standard. It's you'll have to ask. Google Doc. Yeah, first thing I would
Squizzle
do is change the font.
Oh my gosh, it was so nerve-wracking too because just to give a little insight into like how different every single company is, Google had given me this whole, it was for an engineering residency program, and they give you a whole list of things to like study and everything. And every other company that I had interviewed for was either using CoderPad, or there's actually another one that I used that was for system design interview, which was more like drag and drop squares. I can't remember what tool it was. But the Google Doc is kind of interesting because it causes you to really have to talk through what you're doing because you can't run it. Like you have
Yeah.
to make sure by going through it. I'm realizing that this showcase thing here is literally just recordings that people on interviewing.io have made available
like
for public that
shared.
you can watch.
That's really cool.
That's
Very,
super
very
cool. Oh, look, you can even filter it by Microsoft, microwave, filter it by Facebook, Amazon. And that's another thing I really like about LeetCode is or back in my day when I used to use these. Oh, look, they still have it. Like top Microsoft questions. I'm curious. Let's go. Let's see. Oh, I need a subscription.
Oh, come on.
Man, it's behind a paywall, but this is an ad for LeetCode apparently. But I definitely paid. I feel like just like you said, Gwen, like I go through these phases where I'll like pay for a subscription for like, it's interviewing season, so I'll get this like reverse system design course for like $60 a month and then like immediately cancel it.
Yeah.
Let's see, how many of these have I completed? I guess they've added a bunch of them to some I've done.
I wanted to echo what you said a little bit about the nerves that you get when you're completing like these exercises or like actually implementing whatever you're asked to whiteboard during the interview. Because and like actually getting real practice with someone that you don't know to interview you, whether it be with like some service or like I don't know, there's someone that you can ask, because learning how to implement anything under pressure while you're being watched and also having to explain as you go, it makes everything so much harder. It's like you ever take a certification and you're being watched and you're like, that's why it's hard for me to take certifications remotely, because it's like,
It makes you feel like you're back in like standardized testing. You know what I mean? I don't know if you had to do that when you were. I'm of the public school generation of the 90s. But yeah, there is something, like even that's why I mentioned the whole thing with Reddit and Andy too, because it was so cool. Like we would have these whiteboarding sessions at Hackbright where, we'd go to a company and these much more senior engineers would practice whiteboarding with us. But there was this like kind of not assumed, like we all knew like, oh, this is practice, like the stakes are low. But with something like, interviewing.io, you're like, oh, this is like a complete stranger. And like, it's even kind of triggering looking at my feedback from 2017. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. At least you get feedback, because I know sometimes like with this service, but sometimes you won't get it when you interview and you're kind of just left with like, feels like you've been ghosted.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, look, referrals.
That's cool.
Ooh, can I refer people? Okay. Maybe I'll drop this link in the chat. Here, I'll drop a link into the chat to everyone.
Code.
Sure. There we go. Everybody can check out interviewing.io. Should we maybe, what we could do? We're taking your questions about interviewing in the chat as well, y'all, so make sure to drop them in there. Yeah. But maybe because you and I are so rusty at whiteboarding, we can watch one of these I
Yeah,
feel like
I would love
that
that.
maybe we could put it on 2x speed or something and kind of like talk through it. But do you have any, I know I do. Gwen, do you have any like whiteboarding stories? And I can start with a couple of mine because I can go back into the vault of Chloe's early days of interviewing. But I have two that come to mind. One is that when I was practicing whiteboarding, and I think I recently told this on another stream, so I apologize if anybody's hearing this twice. But I think it's important to note, and also having worked in the industry a little bit longer, there's a happy ending to it. So when I was practicing whiteboarding at Hackbright, um, you know me, Gwen. I'm always having fun. I'm always like trying to I know what this
Always a
was. I
good
was
time.
keynoting JS Conf Mexico on Tuesday. That's
Mhm.
why I was asking you for all those Spanish translations to make sure that I didn't sound like an idiot. But my whole talk that I gave in this keynote was about the importance of like having fun and enjoying yourself and like having a sense of humor while you're learning. And I showed a
Mhm.
bunch of projects, which I'll show real quick. Oh my God, you'll love this one. Have you ever heard of Comcastify.js?
No.
Oh
What
my
is
gosh.
this?
Okay. So basically, I was sharing all of my favorite silly JavaScript projects because it's a JavaScript conference. So one of them was Comcastify.js, which is an open source project by The Onion. And see how this image is loading really slow?
Yeah.
This is a open source project that will make your images load like in the 90s, like on AOL dial-up. It's literally
Oh, so
what
if you
this
put it on your
does.
website.
Yeah. So I was showcasing a bunch of things like this, like projects that really have a sense of humor. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember what other ones I literally just gave this talk. Why can't I remember it? But essentially, I was just kind of walking through. Oh, I remember the other one. It was nes.css, I think, which is this is the CSS library. But I was showing
Oh,
the JavaScript
sick.
version of this, which
Mhm.
is let me find my icon in Mario Kart. Um, so I was walking through, oh my gosh, this is a video. Okay, ignore me. I'm going to go to my GitHub, github.com/Chloe Codes things. I was showing this other React library. That's what it was, which uses NES React. And you can actually see all of these components in a demo. So you can literally like do your website with all these like Super Nintendo React components.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, but I digress. This is just like
Oh, Pokemon.
different. I know, right? Like all these little sprites and like it's all just this really passionate open source community that maintains this and nes.css and all of these cute little libraries. So everybody check those out. Some of my favorite JavaScript and CSS libraries. But the reason that I share this is because I was talking about how it's important to have fun while you're learning, right? I'm going to
Mhm.
leave this up because it's just so freaking cute while we talk about it. Um, and basically, I told a story about how I was learning how to whiteboard, like literally my first time learning how to whiteboard. And one of the problems that I was given to solve was like, you have a farm and you need to like solve for X, like how many pigs can you fit into this pen and how like you have to separate the pigs from the horses. It's like one of those leak code problems that basically they just like apply to animals too, right?
Mhm.
And I was walking out with my, writing it out with my mentor and some other classmates in my boot camp. And at the end, they gave me feedback and they're like, Chloe, you solved it great. It was perfect. But the one piece of feedback I would give you is just to be a little careful. You used the variable name piggies instead of, pig or like whatever. You may just want to be careful when you're interviewing to just like use more professional variable names. And I was
Pig.
very junior at the time, but I said, you know what? I don't think I want to work somewhere where they don't like my cool variable names. And I've really stuck with that. Like, and I guess I'm just here to say, about 6 years into my career, like, if whimsy and fun and like being your authentic self is something that you're looking to like do and keep, like, with your own discretion, like find ways to like vet for that in your interview. Your whiteboarding interview, similarly, is your chance to interact with what will be your future coworkers and see like how they collaborate as well, especially if you're working at a smaller startup and you're literally interviewing with the engineer that you're going to be, programming with. So if at all, and I think I've done one of the interviewing.io, but I've certainly done bad whiteboarding practice interviews before where I was like, ooh, if I was like interviewing for a company with this person, I don't think I would want to work with them. Keep that in mind while you're practicing. It's your opportunity to also get some practice with what will be your future coworkers. So that's my 2 cents. Have fun.
That
Be nice, have fun.
that's great that you pointed out that, yeah, and I think this is something we've been saying in every stream. We talked about resumes, we talked about cover letters, we talked about a bunch of interviewing stuff, and it's always been like, remember, this is a two-way thing. It's not only if you are a good fit for the place, it's if the place is a good fit for you. And if you get like sort of like these red flags while just interviewing, which is maybe like an hour, half an hour of time, whatever, can you imagine every day for like 5 days a week for like however long you're there, right? You can imagine how many things might pop up then. Yeah, so I also, I don't think I would want to work someplace where you can't use Piggy. Like, what's wrong with that?
Right. Well, and I always tell, the folks that I mentor, and I've seen this happen in real life. So everybody take caution, listen up. I totally understand, having been a boot camp grad, having gotten to the end of my like last bit of savings and like really, really needing a job. And I mentor a lot of folks from non-traditional backgrounds, and I understand the desperateness of getting to that point in your job search where desperation. Yeah, that right? I don't know. I haven't had my second coffee today. Who knows? I'm just like babbling. But I totally get that. And a mistake I often see happen, and I've seen this happen to 2 or 3 of my mentees where I go, I told you so, is that they will take the very first job that they're offered, which is the right instinct, right? You're like, I am at the end of my credit card bill's coming. I need to pay rent. I need to just like get something on my resume. However, typically when you get your first offer, let's say that you've been typically at my boot camp, they always said it took 3 to 6 months to get your job after the boot camp, because it takes about 3 to 6 months to like learn how to interview as an engineer. It's a completely different skill, because you learn how to code in your boot camp and then you have to go out into the world, fall on your face a bunch, learn how to interview, unless you're just like a stellar whiteboarding interviewer, then like more power to you. But a common mistake that I would see happen is people would be like, you know what, I'm desperate, I need to take this job, I have some like weird reservations and feelings about it, and I got like kind of a weird vibe from like my interviewer, but like I need this, I just need something on my resume. And 3 out of 3 times that this has happened to a friend or a mentee, they're looking for another job in 3 months, because they come to me and they go, Chloe, I'm not, I know you told me to like ask about like mentorship in this job, and I had some iffy feelings about the answers they gave me to those questions, and now that I'm on the job, I'm not getting any help, and I just like I'm not feeling comfortable. So my advice to anybody out there is, if you get your first job offer and you don't have a good feeling about it, it is usually a pretty good sign when you get your first job offer that you're like getting the hang of this interviewing thing, right? Like, so much of this is practicing. So it is better to hold out. You are more valuable than you think you are in this industry. Getting your first job is the hardest, but what you don't want to do is to be doing this whole interviewing thing another 3 months later. Like it, and also there's the stress of like having to give notice at your current job and like all of that different stuff. So I'm here to say, you may not think it and you may not feel it, but this is like Mama Chloe telling you, you can be choosy. Like, you are in a decision maker position here where you don't have to take the first thing. Like, if you're starting to get accepted to, or offers from these things, you're on the right track. And if anything feels off, maybe you had an interviewer that said something that didn't sit well with you, or you didn't like, or you felt, you know what, I coded with this person and I really, the vibes. I mean, Gwen, you and I are all about vibes. But did that ever happen to you, Gwen, when you were interviewing? Did you ever like kind of go like, ooh, I didn't like that? Or were there situations where you were like, ooh, I want to work here? I mean, obviously Microsoft, but
I was interviewing for a large company. I'm not gonna say the name, but
Panera Bread. No, I'm just kidding.
probably have their app installed on your phone. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay.
And we were going through the process, and it was like, I think the whole thing took like 2 months. And during the time, like, the recruiter that I had worked with gotten switched. Like, I'd gone through like 3 interviews already. I passed a technical one, and I was going to like the final one, which I had no idea what they wanted about that one. But then right then they switched recruiters, and the new person was just extremely like, not rude, but like, I would say rude, right? and there was like lack of communication and things like that. And when setting up the interview, it was just like so vague and stuff like that. And I was up until that point, I was like very, I want to say very excited, but excited to like, see it through. It just like completely turned it off. And I'm like, well, if it's like kind of iffy right now, like I don't really think it's worth like seeing through. But then and like I like dropped out of like, I withdrew from consideration, and then I ended up getting a promotion at like the job that I was at, and that's what ended me like learning like a bunch of Azure stuff. So it worked out in the end because learning Azure eventually turned into YouTube, which turned into job here, right? But I would say, yeah, I said definitely trust your gut, but I think we also do as the whole like technical interview or like interviewing for a tech job. We don't really do a great job at making people feel like they're valuable, even though they've been rejected, which, just because you're rejected, it doesn't mean like you're not worth anything or like you're never going to find a job. It could be a bunch of things, like I don't know. It could be skill set. It could be a cultural fit. It could be a bunch of things like that. But we don't really do a good job at providing more insight as to like what you could do better. And I wish that was different. I wish there was like always like feedback in interviews and things like that. But I would agree, like trust your gut, because unless you like every single interview you like find red flags or something like that, then maybe you're like the common thing there. But if it's just like one and overall you've been feeling fine, then I would say like, yeah, trust your gut.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
It's
like
not Candy Crush.
yes. I'm sorry, I'm paying attention. I'm just figuring out how to block someone in the Twitch chat. Uh yeah, sorry, got a little distracted. Daniel, you lied to me. You are the same Daniel. I just checked. You have the exact same username as the person who was harassing me on Twitter. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to block you.
This is
Anyway, back to the more important things. So, I have another whiteboarding story. So one time, and I think this is good to share just because I didn't know that I could do this until someone told me. I remember my very, very, very first on-site interview. Actually, I just saw an ad for them on the BART, so it was like a very nostalgic moment for me today. I interviewed for this company, and I went to a boot camp that was JavaScript and Python, and they knew that. They knew that I was a boot camp grad. They knew that I was a very junior candidate, and I remember I got an email from them that said, "Hey, Chloe, here's all your interview lineup stuff. You're gonna be, whiteboarding in Ruby." And I thought, oh my god, like what? Like I had to do the coding challenge in Ruby, and I was very transparent with the recruiter and the hiring manager, and I was like, "Hey, I'm happy to complete this coding challenge, but I am a JavaScript Python developer. That's the only language that I know." So I was imagine my shock, Gwen, when I was like, "Oh my god, they're gonna have me whiteboard in Ruby. Oh my gosh." And I remember I was freaking out about this, and I had either mentioned it to my partner or one of my mentors, and they said, "Oh, just like email the recruiter and tell them that." They probably just like have no idea. They probably have no concept for like it's probably a copy and paste thing that they have. And so I was super nervous because, up until this point in my career, like getting feedback was never something I would have asked from previous jobs. Like I worked in retail, I worked as a summer camp counselor, was a children's birthday party entertainer. Like it's not like I was going to the Disney store and being like, "Can you give me feedback on my interview?" So I felt super uncomfortable, but I did it and I said, "Hi, I don't know how to write Ruby. Like, could I please do it in a language that I understand?" And they said yes. They're like, "Oh yeah, of course. Like, do it in JavaScript. We'll have the engineer do it with you in JavaScript." So I share that story just to share like people are not gonna know, especially if you're junior. You kind of or a boot camp grad or a community taught self-taught person. This is very new for a lot of hiring managers or recruiters, and just making your needs known. I'm trying to do that just in life in general. Like make my needs known. But you can't like don't feel like you have to all of a sudden be an expert at Rust or Ruby or whatever it may be. Like they are bringing you in because they know your skill set and you've gotten that far at that point. So it is okay to do that.
Yeah.
Let's
So
see.
it's okay to try to make it as comfortable as you can for yourself. With that being said, there are also like I guess some of the most used languages when it comes to technical interviews, like when it comes to like the programming aspect, right? Like Python comes to mind, Java comes to mind.
Yes.
But that, you know, again, that doesn't mean that you have to know those. If you do know those and if they align like for you, that's great, right? But like definitely, you know, try to make it as comfortable as you can for you and ask. Like definitely feel free to ask, because these are questions that they're used to getting. Absolutely. Like you're not asking for something out of like some sort of outrageous thing or anything like that. So feel free to just ask like, hey, can I try this? Or hey, is this possible? Or even if they're like, hey, I remember asking again on this this interview that ended up, this large company that I ended up withdrawing from. I remember asking them like, are there any examples of like things that you'll ask during these like or any exercise or problems? And they told me, they gave me a couple of examples, and I had like stuff to prep with. So that was like pretty cool. But yeah, never feel like afraid to ask like questions about like, because again, it's like, it's not necessarily. I feel like a lot of places are getting better at like making it to learn more about you versus like the technical skill set, because the reality is like you're never going to be put in a situation in like production or when you're actually working where it's like you have access to nothing. It's like you must sit down at this desk with a piece of paper and a pencil and write the solution out and then hand it in. It's not school, right? And then I think a lot of places are like getting better at realizing that we can, if we enable you to succeed and you succeed, it's going to work out for both of us, right? So,
and those are actually the best interviews that I've had, are the ones where I'm whiteboarding with someone and I'll be talking through my solution and I'll go, okay, I'm pretty sure that there's a library to do this, but I don't think I'm allowed to like Google something right now. And they're like, oh, well, let's Google it together. And I'm like, great, like a real engineer. Because if you are working with an interviewer, I mean, there are of course these exceptions that, you know, at least my experience at Google and you know, other major companies, you can't Google it. But for a lot of the startups that I interviewed at for my first couple roles, like, you know, these people are humans and they've had to interview before and they know how terrible it is to interview and that you've been there for 5 to 6 hours and like, oh my gosh, like it's so overwhelming. So when you do find those moments, like I will never forget when, hi Stefan, welcome to the chat. I remember when I got interviewed at Sentry, which shout out to Sentry.io, they're hiring, go apply there, they're great. I remember I picked up on a really positive thing from my interview, which was, you know, up until this point, I had interviewed maybe at like 5 or 6 different companies in my career. 95% of the people who interviewed me were men. And I'll never forget when I was at Sentry, I had classic, typical, you know, 6-hour, 5-hour onboarding thing. And they had given my interview lineup to me ahead of time, and they were like, oh, like here's who's going to be interviewing you, blah blah blah. So of course I did all my like deep diving, like looked at everybody's LinkedIn and everything. And I'll never forget it, after my first, so I interviewed with this lovely individual named Max, and then after the second interview, my recruiter Jan came running in and she was like, Chloe, I'm so sorry, I just want to come in. Max pointed out that like you're only being interviewed by men today, so we wanted to make sure that we got a non-binary person and a woman interviewing you today as well, just to like really make sure that you get a feel for like all the types of people who work here. And I thought, wow, super thoughtful that someone on the team identified that and told and felt strongly enough that to tell a recruiter that they have the availability and the bandwidth to pull in like a non-binary and a female person to come in here. And that really solidified a solid yes for me, because I was picking between different offers and I was like, you know what? That really showed me like the importance of like diversity and inclusion and making sure that I felt comfortable. So look out for those little signs. I know it's always tempting when you interview to be like, oh, they have my favorite snacks and I could ride my bike here. And like, you know, you kind of start thinking about like, oh my gosh, they do gym reimbursement. I could go to Equinox, you know, like whatever it may be.
And you never go.
You never go. Oh my gosh, it's so true though. But notice and pick up on those little things. Like if you have a really good conversation and a good rapport with like one of your interviewers, like, you know, and it's someone that you're going to be working with, that's like a check. Like that's like a, okay, thumbs up. Like maybe even keep your own little notepad nearby and be like, or like, like liked this one, didn't like this this company. Do any of these like leak code problems here, Gwen, like strike something in you? Like I don't know if we're gonna do one live on the air, but should we do it in Rust? No, I'm just kidding.
It's the future.
Let's see. Rust is the future. Let's see. Let's just take a look at. Let's get an easy one. Let's go to difficulty.
I haven't
easy.
done like coding. I've done a lot of like building out like networking, like diagram stuff, because like I was doing like sysadmin and cloud engineering, and I remember like this one I guess actual whiteboarding, because I was actually there and there was a whiteboard. I remember opening up so the VP, no, the what's the not VP, the CTO, and then my direct hiring manager were there, and they were like, can you sort of just diagram out like what like a jump box infrastructure would be. And for those who are not familiar, jump box infrastructure is like you have applications sitting on virtual machines that are like different subnets, but they only have private IP addresses, so you can't access it directly from the public internet. Like you'll have to go into like a VM that's publicly accessible that has nothing, that literally you can just use to VPN into like other virtual machines. Can you like diagram that out for us? I was like, all right, cool. And I go to open up the first marker, and then I'm like super nervous, and then I like put it against the whiteboard, and it's like dry, and I'm like, oh, can I get another marker? And then I think they made a joke that, looking back at it, I'm like, this wasn't funny at all, but they were like, oh, maybe that's a sign. So one of them said that. I was like,
rude.
Yeah, very rude. But I ended up getting the job. The dude was just like I guess a rude, or like had a bad sense of humor, or whatever person
Rude
in general.
dude.
But I ended up like getting the job and stuff like that. But also, I remember like my hiring manager then worked with me through the like the thing, would ask me like, hey, do you think you should try this? You should try, like, would you do this? Would you need this kind of thing? It was fantastic. It was like a back and forth, us like figuring the solution out kind of thing. And it ultimately turned into like a very, very, I guess, impactful role for me. But I got all like great vibes besides that one joke. But besides that, everything else was like fantastic during that experience.
Yeah, I feel like, it's one of those things where you also like have to think like, okay, like, am I just like overly sensitive right now because I'm very nervous? Like,
Oh yeah, all
yeah.
your feelings are heightened then. Like,
yeah.
and try not to let it get to you. Then maybe you can analyze it like later, obviously. But like then, like try to do your best, and like, I don't know, don't start like yelling or like.
Right.
How
I have
dare you?
seen that before. I have seen very rude candidates where I'm just like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I even had, I think this is worth mentioning. Like, okay, so Gwen, you've given a demo before, like a live demo where you've given a talk. I always think it's so funny. This would even happen to me as an actress. Like one time I was on stage and like literally from like here to here, my costume ripped. And to me, everything was in slow motion and I was like, no, and like everybody could see it, and like, but truly the costume person was in the front row and like didn't even notice it. But I think it's the same thing when you mess up or make a mistake in an interview. Like I remember I was interviewing a candidate once where they had an issue with their live demo, and I was like, no, like this happens to literally everyone. It's a live demo, like, but time seems to move slower when things go wrong. Just be mindful of that. Like you're probably overthinking it more than it's like when I was going to say when you slip on a banana peel in front of people, but like no one's doing that except for in Mario Kart. But like it's much more like time slows down for you, not the interviewers, and the interviewers just want you to have like a good time. So like don't ever get worried about that. I opened up a JS Paint thing here, by the way. If we do want to do any interview whiteboarding practice, maybe we can do like a pseudo one. Like someone give us a question in the chat, not a whiteboarding question, but like just give us a general question and we will do it in the style of whiteboarding, if that makes sense. Like ask me a question about the 90s or something and I'll like or something that has to be solvable, I guess, because I think it really speaks to something, Gwen, that you and I are full-time professional working women and we haven't interviewed in a hot minute and this is not something that we've practiced. And I think that really speaks to how broken the interview process is. However, I will say a lot of interviews that I had were walking through something that I had built, which I so much more prefer, because then you can have an in-depth technical conversation where you're like, oh yeah, like here's the decisions I made and here's why I built it this way. Oh yeah, like let's fix this thing together. How do you make toast? Okay. Should we do this one, Gwen? Do you want to ask me how I make toast and I have the thing open. So you ask me how I make toast and I will ask the questions like, was Angel or Spike best? And I haven't seen Buffy, John. I know. It's an absolute crime. I think it's from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, BTVS. But there is a drag club nearby doing the Buffy the Musical, and I'm very sad that I don't have the contextual reference to go and appreciate it. Oh yeah, the how do you make a PB&J sandwich one? That we did that one in the 5th grade. Okay, let's do that one. That was kind of an amalgamation of the toast and PB&J sandwich. So how about I walk through this in this JS Paint thing,
Hmm.
and you can ask me some leading questions like, oh, how would you? Okay, so you ask me the question, and we'll go into it.
Okay. Chloe,
Yes,
you are the weakest link. No, I'm just kidding.
ma'am.
Could you walk me through how you would make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
Sure. A couple clarifying questions for you.
Okay.
Would you like this PB&J sandwich toasted?
For the scenario, let's say yes.
Okay, I'm just going to write a note here. Do not use JS Paint in your whiteboarding.
Is that
And
the
don't- Toasted. Okay, cool. So I'm just writing a note here about okay, cool. And do you have any dietary would this customer have any dietary restrictions? Like any allergens to sugar or anything like that?
No, none.
Okay. No. Okay. And let's see. And keep in mind, okay, when I go like when I hold my tea, this means that I'm doing a sidebar. Remember, you can ask as many clarifying questions as you want, and you should ask clarifying questions. Okay. All right. I'm with that in mind, I'm going to start kind of building a solution here. So I think the first thing that I would do here is get the bread out of the bag. Okay, I'm not going to write bread. This is going to take too long.
The
Bread.
pencil one might be a little better.
I think
No?
you're right. Let's do the pencil. Bread. Much better. Okay. So I'm gonna get the bread, take it out of the bag. Am I kind of going the right direction that you're thinking here? It's so weird with toast. Okay.
Yeah. Let's keep going. Let's see
Okay.
where it goes.
All right. So I am gonna put this bread into the toaster. So if x equals bread, I'm gonna put the bread into the toaster. Now, I'm going to assume that since we're making this, we don't know too much about the user. We probably want like not too burnt, but like not too soft. Is there any preference on the level of toastedness, Gwen?
Yeah, let's keep it like right in the middle so we can satisfy as many people as possible.
Okay, that perfect golden toast. So let's see. So if we want that, I would say, the microwave setting here, I'm gonna say, let's say it's a 1 through 10 scale. Actually, that's pretty crazy. 1 to 5. So let's settle at a nice 3. We'll do 3.
About half.
About half here. A little bit. Depending on the variancy in the toasting methods, maybe we want to do a test. Add some test to our toast here. So I'm gonna do a test piece of bread first. Depending on if it's too brown or too white or brown, if it's wheat bread. So as you can see, I'm walking through all the scenarios. I'm walking through like different. I talked about testing. That could be a test for your code. Okay. So let's say I've gotten to my perfect. Let's say we do that test and we find out that we want it to be a 2. We'll do the 2 setting on the toaster. In this situation, would I have a 2 toaster? Or would there just be room for 1 bread?
Oh, do you mean like is it
Like,
two
put 2
slice
in.
kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's assume you
Okay.
have a toaster with 2 slices.
Okay, that's great. Using that tool in the coding world, it would be a library or their tool. I feel like this is like my talking stick here.
Yeah.
So, what do you mean? Put it in the toaster. We got a question from another interviewer in the chat. So what I mean by putting it in the toaster is taking the bread, putting it in my hand. I want to put both slices of bread in the toaster at the same time, so I have the same toastiness on each bread. I also want to make sure that I'm being, yes, import toaster.js. Exactly. Thank you for reminding me of that command. And then does the user like peanut butter more than jelly? Or jelly more than peanut butter?
Let's assume that we don't know.
We don't
Have
know.
that. Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to do like equal on each side. So I'm going to do, let's say, once they come out of the toaster, I am going to, oh, I got to change colors. Got to jelly it up. And I'm going to peanut butter it up. And, okay, those both look like the same color. Just imagine, here we go, peanut butter, jelly. And I think when I serve this, I am going to not put them together so the user can kind of figure out, this is the UX portion. The user can determine, how they mash it together if they want to move it around. But is that a little bit of what you were looking for? Okay, cut. This is a very weird scenario. But crunchy or smooth? That's a great question. Okay, yes, we're getting so many. So I prefer organic peanut butter. So let's walk through a little bit of what I did other than draw this crazy diagram. So a couple things that I did in here was, first, before I wrote anything, I asked a bunch of clarifying questions, which I think is so important when you're doing a real whiteboarding interview, because I've seen time and time again people going through with a whole entire solution and then like missing a caveat that like maybe was provided by the interviewer. Let's see. Do you have any feedback for me, Gwen, other than not doing it in Microsoft Paint?
I think you did great on asking about like which tooling you like with the toaster kind of thing. If we had prefaced like a little, like at the beginning when you were asking a bunch more questions, do I already have the ingredients? Do I need to go buy it, or do I have unlimited? Because then you talked about like testing and like if it didn't come out right, you do more and stuff like that kind of thing. But yeah, I besides that, pretty good.
Did I get the job as chief bread maker in charge?
I would say you got the job.
Yes, I'm hired.
Mom's like.
This is now an ad for GIF and interviewing.io. Oh my gosh, it's 4:27. We've only got a couple minutes left. Okay, this is the last episode.
This is the last episode.
How can I help? Let's reminisce on some of our favorite moments. We
cry
don't
together.
have a montage to play for everyone. We should have put. You know what? We'll do a follow-up app, and we'll put together a montage. Yes, last episode ever of this show, but Gwen and I are going to be doing some fun little other things. So stay tuned for that.
There's more planned, but this is the end of this one.
I really enjoyed. Okay, I loved having our guests when we went through. We gave them makeovers. We did resume makeovers. Oh my gosh! I mean, the song. What are we gonna do without the song in our lives? But if you're in the chat and you've joined us for some other episodes, tell us your fave moments. I've just enjoyed learning so much from you, Gwen, because you and I have different backgrounds and experiences, but we're both non-traditional folks, and it's been so cool to like learn about each other's experiences interviewing and learning from our chat about their experiences, because no one's interview experience is alike, I feel like. Ooh, I have a podcast I'm going to recommend here. I'm going to hide my screen. You share your favorite moments, Gwen, and I'm going to share a really good interviewing podcast here in a sec.
One of my favorite moments, our first episode, where you were like, I watch a lot of trash.
Oh my God. Wait, I think that was someone in the chat who asked that question. Maybe it was John. I don't remember, but someone was like, wow, Chloe, you're so well read. I would just like love to know what your reading list is. And I was like, trash?
Yeah, it was
an
great.
Iconic moment.
There's many moments, and everything's recorded. Everyone can go check out. We've done cover letters, resumes, a bunch of interviewing stuff. I've shown y'all my resume, which was like really cool because, obviously now I have a job that I love, but like back then I was like, oh my goodness, I hate this whole interviewing process. But now I can look back at it, and it's like it's like full circle, like, you know. But yeah, and like the chat, let us know what kind of things you may want us to do in the future, because like we said, we have plans to do more stuff. But yeah, this is the end of this series, but let's celebrate. Let's not be sad, let's celebrate, right?
We're gonna celebrate. Also, I'm gonna share. So, I listened to this podcast yesterday. I was a proud mom because, full disclosure, PJ Metz is one of my mentees. But there is a really great story. I'm gonna drop this in the chat so everybody can add it to their podcast list and check it out. This episode in particular was really, really cool. Yeah, PJ, we love PJ. My bot co-creator PJ. If you tuned into any of the Got Bot series. But PJ tells this incredible story on this episode. Well, first of all, he talks about making the career transition from high school teacher to working as a developer, education developer relations person over at GitLab. But he tells an incredible story that I actually was right there with him for, where he had an offer rescinded. So he got the offer, he gave his 2 weeks notice at his old job, he was like ready to
Wow.
go, and then they pulled the offer. And it's a really great story that he tells about, like, you know, how that motivated him and how like it lit a fire under him and he was able to pull through that. And I think that's a situation, it happened to me before. It's very rare that it happens to people, but it does happen. And it's such a good story of resilience and just like knowing like that there's so many things out of your control in the job search process, and would highly recommend this episode. PJ Metz is fabulous. Follow him on everything as well. I also get a shout out on there, which was very cute. But yeah, like I would say my advice to anybody out there who's interviewing and watching any of these back, like maybe, oh my gosh, Gwen, what if we're like 85 years old and these videos are still on the Microsoft Reactor YouTube and our channels? I just say, regardless of like when you're watching this or when you're seeing this, do not hesitate to reach out to Gwen and I on Twitter or social media and ask
tweeters.
us any kind of questions. Like we said, we'll be continuing talking more about these different topics and things. But really, like, confidence is key, y'all. Like it there it comes with time, and especially as you get more senior in your
Practice.
career. But a lot of it is practice. It's like I said, you know, once you get your first offer, you'll probably start getting more offers because you're learning how to interview. This stuff isn't easy, Gwen. Like, if it was easy, you know, my dad would be doing it. And
Working
he
at
can't figure out.
microwave.
Yeah, he'd be working at microwave with me, right? Oh my gosh, we're 2 minutes over. How should we end? I mean, we have to end with this song, but should we end with a high five through the screen, and then like that'll solidify the end, and then we'll play
We
the
have to do it
music.
like this though, right?
Okay, ready?
Wait,
1, 2. Thanks,
two,
everybody. We love you. Bye
bye.
bye.